From Chapter 3, Creating Adventures, page 74. Start with a villain. Putting care into creating your villain will pay off later, since the villain plays such a pivotal role in advancing the story. Use the Adventure Villains table in the previous section to get started, and use the information in Chapter 4 to help flesh out the villain. For example, your villain might be an undead creature seeking to avenge a past imprisonment or injury. An interesting aspect of an undead villain is that this past injury might have occurred centuries ago, inspiring revenge against the descendants of those that harmed it. Imagine a vampire imprisoned by the members of a religious order of knights, and who now seeks revenge against the current members of that order. Once you have a villain, it's time to determine what steps the villain takes to achieve its goals. Create a timeline showing what the villain does and when, assuming no interference from the adventurers. Building on the previous example, you might decide that your vampire villain murders several knights. By slipping past locked doors in gaseous form, the vampire is able to make the deaths appear natural at first, but it soon becomes clear that a depraved killer is behind the murders. If you need additional inspiration, consider a few different options for how the villain's actions unfold over the course of the adventure. Let's roll this villain. An aberration bent on corruption or domination. Perfect. Now let's roll the villain's action. Serial crimes. The villain commits crimes one after the other, but these acts are repetitive in nature rather than escalating to greater heights of depravity. The trick to catching such a villain lies in determining the pattern underlying the crimes. Though serial killers are a common example of this type of villain, your villain might be a serial arsonist favoring a certain type of building, a magical sickness that affects spellcasters who cast a specific spell, a thief that targets a certain kind of merchant, or a doppelganger, kidnapping and impersonating one noble after another. Now we're going to flip to page 94. Let's roll the villain's scheme. Magic. Let's see what kind of magic. They want to obtain an ancient artifact. Classic. And then let's roll. Their method is false gods. Ooh, this is getting real juicy. Lastly, villain's secret weakness. Finding and exploiting a villain's weakness can be very gratifying for players, although a smart villain tries to conceal its weakness. A lich, for example, has a phylactery, a magical receptacle for its soul, that it keeps well hidden. Only by destroying the phylactery can the heroes ensure the lich's destruction. Let's roll this weakness. Number 3, the villain is weakened in the presence of a particular artifact. Ooh. So we have an aberration bent on corruption or domination who's committing serial crimes, whose goal is magic, specifically an ancient artifact, whose methods are false gods, and whose weakness is the presence of a certain ancient artifact. What kind of villain is that? Tell me in the comments.